Prayer is often described as the heartbeat of faith, a lifeline that connects us to God, filling our lives with purpose and power. Yet, in the hustle and bustle of today's world, it's easy to forget how truly transformative prayer can be. It's not just a religious ritual to be checked off a list, but a powerful weapon in the spiritual battle we face daily. In this video, we'll dive into the deeper significance of prayer, exploring how it strengthens our faith, fortifies our hearts, and becomes the foundation of our spiritual journey. Join me as we rediscover the true power of prayer and learn how to build a deeper, more intimate connection with God through persistence, sacrifice, and unwavering devotion. Prayer, as described in the Bible, is not merely a ritual or a way to ask for things. It is a spiritual battle, a form of warfare fought on our knees. Ephesians 6 verse 12 emphasizes the gravity of this spiritual conflict by reminding us that our struggles are not against flesh and blood, but against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. This highlights the importance of prayer as our primary weapon in facing life's challenges. It is not just a comforting practice, but a vital tool that equips us to engage with the unseen forces at work in the world. In modern life, we often overlook the seriousness of prayer. We treat it as a quick ritual, a moment of solace when we need it, but fail to see the deep power it holds in both our personal lives and in the world around us. Prayer, as a spiritual battle, requires persistence, discipline, and an understanding of its importance. To truly grasp the nature of prayer, we need to consider it as a life-altering practice that can bring clarity and transformation when we are confronted with confusion and difficulties. This concept of prayer as warfare is not a new one. Historically, great leaders and influential figures have understood and emphasized the power of prayer in overcoming challenges. Consider someone like Martin Luther King Jr., whose fight for civil rights was deeply intertwined with his prayer life. King, while leading the charge for justice and equality, often turned to prayer for guidance and strength. It wasn't simply his eloquence in speeches or his activism that inspired millions, but his ability to connect with God in prayer, seeking divine wisdom for the immense challenges he faced. For King, prayer was not just a passive act but a spiritual discipline that fueled his courage, determination, and vision for a more just society. In our own lives, prayer can serve as that same source of strength. I recall times in my life when I faced difficult circumstances, times of confusion or doubt, when prayer brought clarity. It wasn't about spending hours reciting intricate prayers or trying to impress God with my eloquence. Instead, it was about heartfelt, consistent communication with God, where I laid my struggles before Him and sought His guidance. There's a certain simplicity in that, a power in honesty and persistence, which allows us to find direction even in the most uncertain times. A key aspect of this type of prayer is understanding its transformative power. As John 14 verse 13 reminds us, "And I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son." This verse isn't simply about asking for material needs or desires. It is about the power of prayer to align us with God's will and to see His work unfold in our lives. When we pray in faith, trusting that God will respond, it opens the door for transformation, not only in our lives but also in the communities and churches we are part of. Imagine the impact if entire communities embraced the transformative power of prayer. The potential for change would be extraordinary. Prayer, when truly understood, is a way to connect with the divine and access a strength beyond our own. It's a practice that goes beyond words. It's about cultivating a deeper relationship with God. In the Bible, we see the importance of constant, honest communication with God. Prayer is not just about asking for help in times of need, but about maintaining an ongoing relationship that allows God's power and guidance to flow into every aspect of our lives. This is especially important when we encounter obstacles, whether they are personal struggles, societal injustices, or even global crises. In the life of someone like Mother Teresa, we see how prayer was central to her ability to serve others. She dedicated her life to helping the poor and destitute, not out of a sense of duty alone, but because of her profound connection to God through prayer. Her ability to endure hardships, face criticism, and continue her work came from a deep reliance on prayer as a source of strength and clarity. She famously said, "I can do things you cannot. You can do things I cannot." Together we can do great things. While her work in the world was monumental, it was prayer that grounded her and gave her the strength to carry on. Similarly, in the corporate world, leaders like Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, emphasized the importance of discipline, consistency, and balance in their lives. Cook, while running one of the most influential tech companies in the world, has spoken about the need for personal reflection and staying grounded. While not openly religious, his commitment to discipline in every aspect of life is a modern example of how consistency, whether in prayer, work, or personal growth, can lead to lasting success. Prayer, in this sense, can be seen as a form of discipline, a daily commitment to align oneself with a higher purpose and receive the clarity and strength needed to fulfill one's mission. When we examine the lives of influential figures like these, we see the clear impact of personal disciplines, such as prayer, in guiding their actions and decision-making. Whether they openly acknowledged it or not, their success often stemmed from a deeper connection to something greater than themselves, whether that was prayer, personal reflection, or spiritual discipline. The power of prayer lies not in its formality or eloquence, but in the relationship it fosters, the clarity it brings, and the strength it imparts. In conclusion, the true nature of prayer is not merely a passive act or a ritual. It is a battle, a spiritual war fought on our knees. It is a weapon that allows us to confront the challenges of life with the strength, wisdom, and clarity that can only come from God. As we embrace this understanding of prayer, we begin to recognize its transformative power in our own lives and in the lives of our communities. Just as leaders throughout history have relied on prayer to guide them through difficult battles, so too can we find strength in the spiritual discipline of prayer. It is not just about asking for help, but about building an ongoing relationship with God that equips us to face the challenges of life and, ultimately, transform the world around us. In today's fast-paced world, prayer is often viewed as a secondary activity, something we do when we remember or only when it's convenient. With the constant demands of work, family, and social obligations, it's easy to let prayer fall to the bottom of the priority list. In fact, for many people, prayer has become nothing more than a ritualistic gesture, said quickly before meals or at the end of a service, without much thought or intentionality. Jonathan Fuell, in his article for Decision magazine, critiques this casual approach to prayer, highlighting how it has lost its true significance and power in the lives of many believers. He argues that in the busyness of life, we've neglected the very thing that could renew our spirits and bring us closer to God: prayer. This attitude toward prayer is deeply concerning because it neglects one of the most powerful tools God has given us to navigate life's challenges. Prayer is not just a ritual or an afterthought. It is a lifeline, a means of communicating with the Creator, seeking guidance, and receiving strength. In the Bible, prayer is presented as a way to tap into the power of God, not just as a formality to check off our list. But in our modern culture, we've allowed it to become something routine, lacking the depth and reverence it truly deserves. Fuell's critique of this attitude challenges us to reevaluate our approach to prayer. He points out that we often complain about the decline of church attendance, spiritual vitality, and the state of our culture, but fail to turn to the one solution that has the power to transform all of these things: prayer. When we neglect prayer, we are essentially neglecting our relationship with God, and this leads to spiritual emptiness and disconnection. The more we neglect prayer, the more disconnected we become from God's will and guidance, leaving us vulnerable to the distractions and pressures of the world. Think about the influence that prayer could have on both our personal lives and our communities if we took it seriously. Imagine if every Christian committed to daily, intentional prayer. It wouldn't just change our individual lives. It would have a ripple effect throughout our churches, our families, and our communities. The spiritual impact would be immeasurable. Just as we prioritize daily activities like eating, sleeping, or working, prayer should be seen as an essential part of our daily routine. Without it, we are navigating life without the strength and wisdom that only God can provide. This is not just a theoretical idea, but a call to action. Consider the way powerful leaders in the world manage their time. For example, people like former U.S. President Barack Obama or business magnates like Elon Musk are known for their strict time management and the intentionality with which they approach their work. They set aside time to focus on their priorities, ensuring that the things that matter most are given the attention they deserve. In a similar way, if Christians treated prayer as a non-negotiable priority, we would see incredible transformation in our own lives and in the world around us. Prayer isn't just about asking for help or guidance when we are in trouble. It's about building and maintaining a consistent relationship with God. Much like any other relationship, the more time we spend with someone, the deeper and more meaningful that relationship becomes. The same is true with God. If we only speak to Him when we are in crisis, our relationship with Him will remain shallow and distant. But if we make time for regular, heartfelt communication with Him, we will experience a deeper connection and greater understanding of His will for our lives. Furthermore, neglecting prayer also means neglecting the power that God offers through it. Prayer is not just an individual exercise, it is a collective one as well. When we pray together as a community, we invite God to work in powerful ways. We see this in the lives of leaders like Billy Graham, who often spoke about the power of prayer in shaping not only individual lives but entire nations. His ministry, fueled by prayer, impacted millions around the world. This is the kind of influence that can be cultivated through intentional, powerful prayer. In addition, prayer serves as a constant reminder that we are not in control of everything. In our society, we are often taught that we can and should control every aspect of our lives. But prayer teaches us to surrender to God's will and trust in His plan, even when we don't understand it. This act of surrender is not weakness. Rather, it is a demonstration of faith. It requires humility to acknowledge that we are not self-sufficient and that we need God's guidance in every area of our lives. Consider how this works in the lives of influential figures. Take someone like Oprah Winfrey, whose success is attributed not only to her business acumen but to her deep faith and spiritual practices. She frequently speaks about the importance of connecting to a higher power and grounding herself in prayer and reflection. This spiritual discipline has undoubtedly played a role in her success, offering her the clarity and strength to navigate the complexities of her career and life. Her example illustrates how a commitment to spiritual practices, including prayer, can positively impact not only our personal growth but our professional lives as well. Ultimately, neglecting prayer is a danger because it leaves us spiritually vulnerable and disconnected from the strength that only God can provide. Prayer isn't something that should be relegated to a quick ritual at the end of the day. It is a powerful tool that connects us to God's wisdom, strength, and peace. As Fuel points out, we can lament the decline of spiritual vitality in our culture, but the solution lies right in front of us. If every Christian committed to daily, intentional prayer, we would see a profound transformation in our hearts, in our churches, and in our world. The impact would be nothing short of immeasurable. Persistence in prayer is a key aspect of the Christian faith, yet it is often misunderstood. In Luke 18 verse 1, Jesus commands us to pray without ceasing, a directive that emphasizes the importance of continuous communication with God. However, persistence in prayer does not necessarily mean hours of uninterrupted prayer, nor does it imply that we should be praying nonstop without pause. Instead, it calls us to be relentless in our faith, unwavering in our trust in God's ability to answer prayer, even when the circumstances seem discouraging. At its core, persistence in prayer is about remaining steadfast and not giving up on God, no matter how bleak the situation may seem. This is where faith plays a crucial role. Faith is what sustains us when we face obstacles, weariness, or doubt. The act of persistent prayer is a demonstration of our belief that God hears our cries and that He will respond in His time and according to His will. Take, for example, the story of Abraham in the Bible. Despite the many years he waited for God's promise to be fulfilled, Abraham's faith never wavered. God had promised him descendants as numerous as the stars. Yet for many years, Abraham and his wife Sarah were childless. In the face of discouragement, Abraham persisted in his faith. He did not abandon his belief that God would fulfill His promise. Eventually, at an age when having children seemed impossible, Sarah bore Isaac. This story demonstrates that persistence in prayer and trust in God's timing is not futile, even when the wait seems endless. Similarly, in modern life, persistence in prayer can be seen in the lives of influential individuals who have faced enormous challenges and obstacles. Consider someone like Nelson Mandela, After being imprisoned for 27 years, Mandela never gave up on his vision for a free and just South Africa. While not explicitly a man of faith in the traditional sense, Mandela's perseverance in the face of incredible adversity is a reflection of the principle of persistence. His endurance during his time in prison, his unwavering belief in the power of reconciliation and equality, mirrors the persistent faith we are called to have in prayer. Another example is Oprah Winfrey, who has publicly shared her struggles with faith and prayer throughout her life. Despite facing numerous personal challenges, including poverty and abuse, Oprah remained persistent in seeking a higher purpose and a deeper connection with God. Her persistence in prayer, through both joyful and difficult times, helped guide her to become one of the most influential figures in the world. Oprah has often spoken about how prayer and meditation have been central to her success, providing clarity and direction when faced with doubt and uncertainty. In personal reflection, many of us experience moments when we feel like giving up on prayer. Life can become overwhelming and discouragement can creep in. There are days when the energy to pray seems absent and doubt may cloud our minds. It's easy to feel as though our prayers are going unanswered or that our efforts are in vain. But this is where persistence comes in. We may not see immediate results, but persistence is about continuing to trust in God, even when it feels difficult. I recall a time in my own life when I was faced with a particularly challenging season. I felt worn out, both physically and spiritually. My prayers seemed to go unanswered, and I questioned whether my efforts were worth it. During that time, I was reminded of God's word, specifically, the encouragement to hold on and not give up. It wasn't an instant transformation, but over time, I saw God's faithfulness unfold in ways I never expected. My persistence in prayer, even in the midst of uncertainty, allowed me to witness God's work in my life and see the fulfillment of His promises in ways I had not imagined. This lesson of persistence in prayer is crucial for all believers. Prayer is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing conversation with God. It's easy to feel disheartened when we don't see immediate answers, but it is essential to remember that God's timing is not our timing. He is always at work, even when we can't see it. The persistence required in prayer is a sign of trust in God's sovereignty, knowing that He is working things out for our good, even if the process is longer or more challenging than we anticipated. Persistence also means that we continue to pray even when we don't feel like it. It's about pushing through the discouragement, fatigue, or doubt that might otherwise cause us to abandon prayer. This kind of persistence strengthens our faith and draws us closer to God. It is during these times of persistence that we experience God's faithfulness in deeper ways, as we learn to trust Him more fully. In Luke 18, the parable of the persistent widow offers a vivid example of this kind of relentless faith. The widow in the story continually petitions an unjust judge for justice, refusing to give up despite the judge's initial refusal to act. Jesus uses this story to illustrate how we should persist in our prayers to God, knowing that He is just and will respond in His perfect time. The widow's persistence, although directed at an unjust judge, serves as an example for how we should approach God, without hesitation, without giving up, and with unwavering faith. In conclusion, persistence in prayer is not just about praying for hours on end. It is about an ongoing, faithful commitment to communicate with God, trusting that He hears us and will respond. It requires us to continue praying even when we feel discouraged, fatigued, or doubtful. The examples of biblical figures like Abraham and modern-day figures like Nelson Mandela and Oprah Winfrey demonstrate how persistence in the face of difficulty leads to transformation and victory. As we persist in prayer, we align ourselves with God's will, deepen our faith, and witness His faithfulness unfold in our lives. Psalm 5 verse 3 offers a simple yet powerful model for prayer. In the morning, Lord, You hear my voice. In the morning I lay my requests before You and wait expectantly. This verse encapsulates the importance of prioritizing God at the beginning of each day, setting the tone for the rest of the day. In the fast-paced world we live in, we are often bombarded with distractions right from the moment we wake up. However, the psalmist teaches us that the most important action we can take each morning is to place God first, both in our thoughts and our actions. The idea of sacrificing morning comforts to pray is profound because it challenges our natural inclinations. Most people reach for their phones as soon as they wake up, checking notifications, emails, or social media, which often leads to an immediate immersion into the busyness of life. By contrast, Psalm 5 verse 3 suggests that we should set aside these distractions and focus first on connecting with God. This is not just a religious duty, but a practical step toward ensuring that God is the first thought in our minds as we begin the day. It's about making God a priority, rather than an afterthought, in our busy lives. Starting each day with God demonstrates a commitment to the relationship we have with Him. This act of devotion, however small, is a declaration that we acknowledge His sovereignty and importance in our lives. It's easy to let our minds wander toward the day's tasks and responsibilities, but taking just a few minutes to pray allows us to center our thoughts and align our hearts with God's will. It's a way of ensuring that our minds are focused on the eternal rather than the Tim. This principle is often echoed in the lives of successful people who are known for their discipline and ability to stay focused. Take Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, for example. Cook is known for his rigorous daily routine, which includes waking up early to plan his day. While Cook's routine may not involve prayer, his commitment to starting the day with intentionality and purpose mirrors the discipline that Psalm 5 verse 3 encourages. By starting the day with a clear focus and plan, Cook ensures that he approaches his day with clarity and purpose. Similarly, for those who prioritize prayer, the act of taking time to lay requests before God in the morning provides that same sense of intentionality, but with the added spiritual benefit of aligning with God's guidance. In fact, this practice of starting the day with prayer can make a profound difference in how we approach challenges throughout the day. When we begin the day in communion with God, we are better equipped to face whatever obstacles may come our way. There's a sense of calm and peace that comes from knowing that God is with us and that we have asked for His help and guidance. Just as athletes or business leaders prepare mentally for the challenges ahead, prayer provides spiritual preparation that strengthens our resolve and focus. A personal example might be a CEO or high-level executive who starts their day with a quiet moment of reflection or prayer. For instance, Howard Schultz, the former CEO of Starbucks, has often spoken about the importance of maintaining a personal sense of purpose and staying grounded in his values. While his routine may involve more than just prayer, Schultz's commitment to mindfulness and purpose echoes the principle in Psalm 5 verse 3, starting the day with an intentional act that sets the tone for the rest of the day. When we prioritize God, it helps us to remember what truly matters, beyond the chaos of deadlines, meetings, or tasks. Taking time for morning prayer can also help us develop a deeper sense of gratitude. By reflecting on God's goodness and laying our requests before Him, we are reminded of His provision and care. It shifts our focus from what we don't have to what we do have, cultivating an attitude of thankfulness. Many successful people, including Oprah Winfrey, have spoken about the importance of starting the day with gratitude. Oprah has often shared how her morning routine involves reflecting on what she is thankful for. This simple practice has helped her maintain a positive and grounded outlook, even during difficult times. For those who include prayer in their morning routine, this act of gratitude is amplified by seeking God's will and direction for the day. While Psalm 5 verse 3 emphasizes laying our requests before God, it also invites us to wait expectantly. This aspect of waiting with anticipation is essential because it demonstrates trust in God's timing and His ability to respond. In a world that values instant gratification, learning to wait with expectancy can be a challenge. However, it is in the waiting that we cultivate patience and trust in God's faithfulness. Waiting expectantly reminds us that God's answers may not come immediately, but they will come according to His perfect plan. It teaches us to embrace the process rather than focusing solely on the outcome. Even influential figures like former U.S. President Barack Obama have spoken about the importance of patience and waiting. Obama, known for his calm and deliberate approach to decision-making, often emphasized the value of taking time to reflect before acting. His ability to pause, think, and wait for the right moment is akin to the spiritual practice of waiting expectantly on God. Like Obama's measured approach, waiting for God's response in prayer involves trust that the right answer will come at the right time. In conclusion, Psalm 5 verse 3 offers a practical yet profound approach to prayer that can be applied to our daily lives. By prioritizing God each morning, sacrificing the comfort of checking our phones or diving into daily tasks, and laying our requests before Him, we acknowledge His sovereignty and trust in His provision. This discipline of prayer not only strengthens our relationship with God, but also sets the tone for a day filled with purpose, clarity, and trust in God's timing. Whether we are high-level executives, leaders, or everyday individuals, the principle of starting the day with God can provide the foundation for a successful and spiritually grounded life. Complacency is a pervasive threat to a vibrant prayer life, and it's something that many of us struggle with in our fast-paced world. The modern lifestyle is filled with distractions, responsibilities, and constant demands that often push prayer to the back burner. We might start the day with good intentions, but by the time our schedules fill up, prayer becomes an afterthought. This is where the danger lies. Prayer can become just another task to check off, rather than an intimate and vital connection with God. Psalm 37 verse 4, however, provides a crucial reminder: "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." This verse emphasizes that prayer is not merely a duty or chore, but a privilege, a means of delighting in God, and a way to draw near to Him. The idea of delighting in the Lord suggests that prayer should be something we look forward to, not something we feel obligated to do. When we treat prayer as a privilege, we shift our mindset from seeing it as a task to viewing it as a time of communion with God, a time to connect with the Creator, to express gratitude, and to seek His guidance. The act of prayer should bring joy and refreshment, not burden. However, complacency creeps in when we become so focused on the busyness of life that we forget to prioritize this precious time with God. One of the main causes of complacency in prayer is the overwhelming pace of daily life. In a world where people are constantly on the go, it can be easy to let prayer fall by the wayside. We prioritize meetings, deadlines, and social obligations, often putting our spiritual lives on the back burner. But this is where the solution lies: consistency. Just like any other important aspect of life, prayer needs to be scheduled and prioritized. If we don't set aside time for prayer, it's all too easy for it to be overshadowed by other demands. This is why setting a specific time each day for prayer is so critical. Treating prayer as a non-negotiable appointment with God helps ensure that it becomes a regular and vital part of our lives. Consistency in prayer is key to overcoming complacency. By establishing a regular time for prayer, we can combat the tendency to push it aside. This doesn't mean that prayer has to take hours or be filled with eloquent words. It simply means that we are intentional about making space for God each day. Whether it's first thing in the morning, before bed, or during a quiet moment in the middle of a busy day, the important thing is that we create a routine that centers our hearts and minds on God. In time, this consistent practice becomes a natural part of our daily rhythm, and the act of praying no longer feels like an obligation but a necessity. Many powerful and influential people around the world recognize the importance of consistency and discipline in their lives, and they apply this principle to various areas, including their faith and spiritual practices. Take someone like Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, for example. Tim Cook is known for his intense focus and discipline, with a strict daily routine that includes early mornings and clear priorities. While his routine doesn't necessarily involve prayer, his commitment to consistency and structure can serve as a powerful reminder of how important it is to make time for what truly matters. Just as Cook schedules his day with precision, setting aside time for prayer in the same manner ensures that we don't let the demands of life push our spiritual well-being aside. The idea of making prayer a priority is also exemplified by figures like former U.S. President Barack Obama, who has spoken about the role of prayer in his life. Despite his demanding schedule, Obama has often reflected on the importance of taking time to pray, particularly during difficult times. His ability to maintain a connection with God amid the pressures of leadership shows that regardless of the chaos around us, prayer can still be a consistent and vital part of life. In his example, we see the power of consistency and intentionality in nurturing a vibrant prayer life. When we prioritize prayer, we also position ourselves to experience the fullness of God's presence. The psalmist's call to delight in the Lord implies that prayer is meant to be an enjoyable experience, not a task to endure. When we shift our mindset and view prayer as an opportunity to enjoy communion with God, we can overcome complacency. It's about delighting in God's character, His goodness, and His love. As we make prayer a priority, we open ourselves up to the transformative power of God's presence. Just as athletes prepare for their most important games or business leaders schedule time for critical meetings, prayer requires intentional preparation. It's about showing God that He is our top priority, above everything else. Furthermore, when we prioritize prayer, we begin to align our hearts and minds with God's will. Consistent prayer helps us grow spiritually, deepen our understanding of His Word, and sharpen our ability to discern His voice. Without prayer, we risk becoming spiritually stagnant, disconnected from God, and prone to the pressures of life. But when we make time for Him, we allow His peace to guide us, His wisdom to direct us, and His strength to sustain us through the challenges we face. Ultimately, overcoming complacency in prayer requires intentionality, consistency, and a renewed perspective on the power and privilege of prayer. Just as we schedule important meetings or commitments, we must also schedule time with God, treating it as a non-negotiable priority. Whether we are high-powered CEOs, busy parents, or anyone else with a demanding life, the key is to recognize that prayer is not an afterthought. It is a vital part of our spiritual well-being. By setting aside time for prayer each day, we position ourselves to experience God's presence more fully, overcome complacency, and live a life that is rooted in His guidance and love. As you reflect on the profound truths we've explored, think about how you can make prayer a central part of your daily life. Commit to starting each morning with God, setting aside the distractions, and praying with persistence and passion. Prayer is not just a ritual. It's a battle for your spirit, a vital connection with your Creator, and the key to unlocking spiritual growth. If this video has inspired you, share it with others, and let's reignite the fire for prayer in our lives and communities. Together, we can witness the transformative power of persistent prayer and the profound impact it can have on our hearts, families, and the world around us.